Yo, we back. Back again with another episode of No Particular Theme, Just Apps. I'm Freddie. And in today's episode, we're going to keep the theme of food apps going. We're going to be dissecting the design of the Chipotle app. I wanted to dissect this app because I recently read an article titled No More Boring Apps by Andrew Allen, I believe his name is, over at andy.works. And it's a wonderful article. I'm going to link it down below. If you're a designer, I think, and you're designing apps in 2021, I think it's worth your read. But that article really got me thinking about the apps that I use today and what apps are a little bit different. That article really focused on the fact that a lot of apps really look the same. And so I took to my library of apps and really dig through what I find to be a pretty different app in general, right? It still does exactly what you need it to do, which is to order food, order Chipotle. But I think the design of it is a little bit different. And there are key points that I want to point out of why it is that this app is different. One of them is being their navigation and how they add depth through screens. I want to talk about their list items and how ordering a specific taco burrito is. And then lastly, the actual submission. I won't actually be submitting an order through Chipotle, but the way that you do it is pretty interesting to me. So let's go ahead and dive into this app and see what I'm talking about. So as we come in, we have a pretty clean home screen. Really, the image here is of a bowl, and the main CTA here is to pretty much reorder your last order. And I love the addition of the amount of time that this order would take to be fulfilled. And we have the specific location that you're picking up from. We have this icon over here that is actually your account. And then, of course, we are pretty familiar with this one as to add to your cart, add to bag. We could do a group order at the bottom right below that main CTA. And then we could also scan this if we happen to be at the store in general. So we pull up this like member card. Of course, this is great to scan if you happen to have Chipotle rewards. But let's get into the navigation. Navigation is pretty interesting here because at the bottom we have this menu with a top arrow that is indicating to us that we could go ahead and swipe up and we could see the menu. And if we go ahead and do that, we now have this menu and we now see a tab bar. The tab bar here is interesting because they're not utilizing any icons. It's just the actual phrases, right? Menu, feature, recent favorites. And then if you toggle between it, I'd really like also how you also need a state in which it's in, right? So I think that's pretty cool how they focus on clearly increasing the size of that particular one and how they're adding depth here as well. So if we see this is elevated, we have this sort of shadow behind it. And it also works sort of for an affordance, right? That there's still more to scroll here. So if we keep going, but let's go ahead and swipe back up. And as we can tell also, it's giving us the indication that if we go ahead and swipe up or, pretty much like press down, that this would then pop up. If we decide that we want to go ahead and, swipe, left, we then come into this add to bag, add to cart. And I love this little avocado. I think this is cool. I think products and digital products in general shouldn't be stale, right? I think in our reality, in some sense, they're a living thing because We interact with them every single day, and they have become a huge part of our lives. And it's great to see that some apps have personality to them. And clearly, this is the case here. I love the little "it's lonely" in here. It's, of course, like emotive drivers as well to get you to add something to your order along with the CTA. But it's these little things that I think make an app interesting, adding personality to it. And if we go ahead and swipe, what is it? If I swipe left, I'm back at that same home screen. Swipe, sorry, it's actually swiping right, right? Yep, swipe right. And now I'm into the profile or your account page. Here it's awesome that they have this reward system right at the front. As we can tell, I'm almost there. If we tap into it, what's interesting is the way that that page comes in. So as we can tell, it has a chevron that's indicating that like it's going to take us to that page. But because this is all this navigation is sort of done in a way where it's like this is all one. Let's think about this as one floor. And if we try to then navigate to something else, we're then sort of adding another layer, which that to me is adding that depth that I was talking about. So if I tap into it, we'll see that that page is going to slide in from the left as opposed to what we would expect to take you to the right. So if we tap into it, let's go back. If we see bonuses, do you see how like that just comes up from the side? Let's go to, I don't know, our commitment to you down here below. That pops up as a modal, as a whole page modal view. This is interesting because, of course, with all the foodborne illnesses that have happened at Chipotle, they have a specific section for all this. A little fact about me: I used to work at Chipotle, not at an actual restaurant. I used to work at a corporate office where I used to answer phone calls from managers, where they would report sick employees. It was a fun job. I did it for a few months before actually going to General Assembly and doing my UX boot camp. But it was a fun time. I really miss those people, and I hope they're actually doing pretty well. But that's one aspect of why I think this app is a little bit different. The navigation is different, right? And actually, I forgot to even swipe down. Here we see some sort of like, I don't know, some sort of ad in some sense. They're trying to really push the new cilantro lime cauliflower rice. And it's interesting how there's no sort of indication that you could go ahead and swipe down and that this would come up. Excuse me, this is something that you could discover on your own. And I also like it because, again, it's an ad for themselves and they're not really calling it out. If you happen to get across it, great. And if you don't, that's fine as well. But let's move into, let's order something. So let's go ahead and swipe up. Maybe let's go ahead and do a burrito bowl. And now, this is sort of done step by step. I also really like how they're the same as with Panera Bread, really including that imagery of what it is that you're going to be eating. But here, it really goes step by step. I think what would be interesting is that, let's think about, the experience of going into Chipotle. When you first go in there, you get in the line, you, of course, get up to where they're heating up the tortilla, and this is where you say you want a burrito, you want a bowl, you want a salad. What would be interesting to me is if you start off with the same things that you're sort of going down. So you first actually start off with the rice. And sure, maybe you say something along the lines like, I want a chicken burrito. And maybe that's the thinking here of having this specific protein or veggie, and also that this sort of like calls for the amount of money that your order is going to be, right? Because the protein is what determines that. So I get that aspect, but I think in terms of like, I'm trying to really contextualize this as to me going in and experiencing ordering the food through the line. The first thing I would be asked is what kind of rice you would like. So that's just something that came to mind, something to think about. But here, nonetheless, let's just make the selection a veggie. And if we keep going down, I want to do white rice. Now, if we saw, we got this indication that if you want to go ahead and customize it, the only thing you have to do is swipe. And that's awesome. That's awesome because, you know, it's given the user a quick contextualized hint of this is the way to do something. I like extra rice. We keep going down. I like pinto. Guac, of course, is already selected because I got a veggie. I want that on the side. Let's do tomato salad, corn, and lettuce. And here, you know, again, let's think about going down the line of ordering in Chipotle. You know, you finally get to that aspect of like you've ordered your food. The final thing is, of course, paying. But before you pay, this is where you have the opportunity to ask for chips. You have the opportunity to ask for a drink. And I like how that is sort of included in this aspect here as well. Let's go ahead and add to bag. This is great, allowing the user to input who this meal is for. And I like that because clearly, you know, I order with my fiance. And so having even this little aspect is pretty cool to me of knowing which one's yours. I know back then they used to do like 1 and 2 and 3, but this is cool. And so now we're taking into the bag here. Here we continue to really be like sort of cross-selled in some sense, right? Asking me to complete my meal in this section here. And then this is where I could apply any sort of promotions, anything along those lines. But let's continue to payment. Now we get to the aspect of really ordering now, right? You're sort of doing a confirmation page here. It's your actual pickup location, your pickup time, if you wanted to donate, your total, and then whatever it is that you wanted to pay with. But what I wanted to point out is this specific little guy right here, hold to submit. And this is interesting to me. I thought about why not just a regular button, right? Like, why not just tap it and that's it? And I think what this does is add some sort of suspense in some sense. And I don't think that's bad. Like, again, you're not necessarily like suspensefully waiting for your order as you're paying, right? But I think this is another element that's being added to a product. And we've seen other apps that do this, even Robinhood, which I'll be dissecting in a few 1 or 2 episodes later. But, you know, they have the whole swipe up to submit your order. Here we have the hold to submit. I think this is interesting. And I actually myself am going to do a little bit more research on this as to like, what's sort of the thinking behind this? Because it could just be as simple as just adding a button, but that's not the case here. So I love that. I love how this, again, this all ties back into how apps could be a little bit different and not so boring. Because in the time that we're living in right now, all apps are really starting to look the same. And so Chipotle is one app that stands out to me in that aspect. I really hope you guys enjoy the episode. Peace.